Okay. 6 o'clock, so I'll call this meeting to order. And Rob, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hannah.
Here.
Mr. Avery.
Here.
Mr. Whitaker.
Here.
Mr. Bear.
Here.
Mrs. Sweet.
Here.
Ms. Least.
Here.
Okay, all members of council are present. This is a special meeting of the Enon Village Council. This is our organizational meeting for 2025. This is not a regular session, so we will stick to this agenda. And for the first item, we would need a motion and a second to establish the date and time of our village council meetings. And what's the pleasure of council?
I mean, everybody's all right with it. I was good this year with the 6 o'clock.
Yep.
I'll move that we have the regular sessions the second and fourth Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m.
I'll second.
And Rob, call the roll, please.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Ms. Least.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Okay, very good. That motion passes. Item number 2. At this time, I will entertain a motion to open up, and this is just for nominations from the floor for President of Council for 2025. So I'd need a motion and a second to open up the nominations.
I nominate Rick Hannah.
I'll second.
Okay, so this is just for opening up the floor
Open the floor.
for nominations.
Okay, I'll open the floor for nominations.
Okay,
You open. I'll second.
okay. And call the roll, Rob.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Ms. Least.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Abstain.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
And now for nominations.
Now I will nominate Mr. Hannah.
And I'll second.
Are there any other nominations to come before council for President of Council? Okay, I need a motion and a second to close nominations.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Ms. Least.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
And to just formalize, we'll need a motion and a second to approve the appointment of Mr. Hannah for the President of Council for 2025.
So moved.
Second.
And Rob, one more time, please.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Ms. Least.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Abstain.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Rick?
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Congratulations. You're stuck with me another year.
Seems like more longer than that.
It does, doesn't it? All right, item number 3. Before we talk about the appointment of a village solicitor, I would request a motion to enter into executive session.
I make a motion to go into executive session for the appointment, compensation of village employees and public officials, please.
I'll second.
And call the roll, please.
Ms. Least.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Okay, we will return.
I'll second.
Motion to return from executive session?
He's listening.
Second.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Ms. Lees.
Yes.
6:32.
Okay, item number 3, I'll read by title only, resolution number 2024-09, resolution employing a village solicitor for the village of Enon, Ohio from January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025, and setting compensation and declaring an emergency. And I'll need a motion and a second to waive the
Motion to waive the
reading
3 reading rule.
rule, please.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Ms. Lees.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to,
Approve.
adopt resolution
Approve.
for 2024-09.
I second.
Any discussion?
Out of here.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Ms. Lees.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
That resolution passes and will take effect after it is signed. On to resolution number 2024-10. By title only, a resolution approving a consulting agreement with Clemens Nelson and Associates from January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025, and declaring an emergency.
I'll make a motion to waive the 3 reading rule.
And I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Ms. Lees.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
And now I need a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2024-10.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Ms. Lees.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Resolution passes and will take effect after signing. Item number 4, motion to establish salaries and wages for village personnel. It would be my recommendation to the council to increase all employees by 2.5% cost of living adjustment. And we have always, well, not always, but recently followed the federal government. So that would be my proposal.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Ms. Lees.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
That increase has been approved. Item number 5, adoption of the rules of council for 2025. There have been no changes, so those will be the same as they were for 2024.
So moved.
Second.
I get 3 seconds. Pick one.
Getting wild.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Ms. Lees.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
All right, those rules are approved. Item number 6. Rob, I'm going to turn this over to you for all the numbers. You are the main event for the night, since this is everything for next year.
Okay, everybody, you have several pieces of paper in front of you, which we can go over in turn. The packet, the stapled packet, if you look at that final column, that 2025 budget that has 2 lines for each fund, that's what I'm going to ask that you pass this evening. At that level, I think in the which lumps salaries and some bennies, and then an other line, and that allows me to move money between appropriation lines throughout the year without going back to the county for approval. And that's the lowest level of control that the state of Ohio allows us to pass a budget in. We're not allowed to do just one line per fund. We have to break it down that way. That first page shows you a comparison of where we started 2024, where we ended 2024, and what the proposed budget for 2025 is. At a top level, we can go over sort of where the numbers are coming from for the changes that are jumping out a little bit. So for streets, you're going to notice that in the personal services line, not a whole lot of change. We have plenty of appropriation left over this year, so any increase that was passed this evening can be absorbed in that number. We do have about 20,000 less in other, and that's mostly because we had some expensive paving projects in 2024 that we're not going to be able to do as much of in 2025, just because of what our carryover estimate is going to be. For the general fund, you'll notice that personal services is quite an increase over what we've had in 2024, and that is a result of what's going on with the police levy. My proposal is that we move one employee from being paid from the police levy fund back to the general fund. Sort of agnostic on what employee that is, but the way the numbers were input, I put an employee that doesn't take insurance from the village. So the costs are just going to be salaries and pension.
It makes it easier for you.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah. So, and that way, having one person assigned to that fund is also going to make it easier on the chief, because he's not going to be having to break down how many hours per period need to be assigned to the police levy for that person and how many need to be applied to the general fund. Should there come something, this year that our receipts are drastically down, we can always revisit that, and we can move people one way or the other. But the proposal right now is just to move one person from the street, or from the police levy fund into the general fund.
And let me just add, just for a little bit of history, typically we would do that every year. The last 2 years, 2023, 2024, we did not do that to get the balance in our general fund back up. So we're in a position where we can handle that now, but it's kind of a trade-off. It really is. But typically we would have had at least one or maybe two at times officers taken out of that general fund.
Then looking down a bit, all of our ARPA money is spoken for. It's not all gone. We encumbered the remaining balance of about $43,000 to go toward what the village's upfront costs of the playground grant at Enon Park will be. We will get back $37,000 from that grant, so that's going to be reflected in the revenue lines that we'll talk about in a little bit. But just to know that for the reporting purposes, we had to have all that money encumbered by year end. So we did a purchase order to the playground equipment company, and that money is sitting there, spoken for, so we can close that out, and we can finish our reporting with the federal government, and that will be done, which will be nice to have. Down to the police levy, it's not a one-for-one trade-off, but you'll see that the numbers are lower on personal services for the police fund. At various times this year, we have not been at what the full complement of employed officers is at the moment. So we will have more expense having everyone employed throughout the year in total than we did in 2024, which is why those numbers are a little bit off from being an even trade. We will have, most likely, if we keep the staffing the way that it is today, we will have a bit more pension expense than we did this year. One of the officers who was part-time but worked close to full-time hours, when they are in a part-time status, they pay into OPRS. When they are a full-time status, they pay into Ohio Police and Pension Fund, which when they're in OP&F, the village pays a higher percentage than they do in OPRs. So that's a 19.5% for police and fire. OPRs is 14. So we have a little bit more expense there that we had to cover, and that's reflected in those numbers too.
What was the proposal that got turned down that we may see again for police and fire? Do you recall?
That was going to be a bigger increase for the employer share.
25%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay.
we need to watch that.
Need to keep that in the back of our minds. I don't know whether we'll see that come back up again in 2025 or not, but I suspect we will.
I think they ran out of time as part of the reason that it hasn't done. So something to watch. But then those the bottom line numbers, you'll see, you know, we're pretty much on par with where things have been in funds. So if you go to the new color sheet that is on its own that I handed out to everybody, this replaces what is the second page of the packet. So these numbers are round numbers as of today. So estimate I did an updated revenue estimate today because for the most part, we've received all of our receipts for the year. The only exception to that will be the water line. So at the bottom, that estimated carryover, I expect to be about $80,000 higher than it is. We keep the water funds segregated from the funds that I manage. So at the end of the month, we get the statement, and Christy reconciles her accounts, and then we get a check over to us that we post for the prior month. So it's all in our aggregated funds, but before it can't be posted until it's reconciled. So not having that yet decreases that. But so I think we'll probably be at about 340 for carryover, and that would, you know, bring us up to around 240 for my year-end estimate if we spent everything that we appropriate and we receive everything that the estimate is.
So let's go back to the general fund real quick. Your original estimate was $235,000. That's been bumped up to $249,000.
Yes. Yep. If you're taking them side by side, and that's just I paid everything I could today, and so I won't be doing any more bill pays out of 2024.
So that was good news because that puts us almost at next year's end, almost $200,000.
Right, and so
Okay.
if you look, my estimated revenue is higher as well.
Yes.
That has to do with that takes into account the $37,000 that we're going to get from the park grant. Captured a little bit more interest income than we have in the past, and we haven't in prior years captured in our revenue budget the farmland rent. So with the ARPA funds going away and the creation of the park donation fund, we're going to have the option to receipt that money differently. But for now, on this estimate, we're taking it to be into the general fund at the moment. Streets looking a little healthier on our carryover than I originally had thought, which is good. We have passed our 30-day deadline with the state auditor's office for my second notification to them about our parks donation fund. So it is officially now in the books, and there for our use. We don't have anything suggested to be appropriated out of it for this year. I did put $25,000 for our estimated revenue, and that is a round number based on what I think the township's responsibility back to us will be. Tim and I had a chance to go over what some of our expenses and our revenues have been, including the farm rent, for the past year, and we think that based on what they spent in 24 and what we spent in 24 and what we receipted, they're going to owe us about $25,000. So that's just what I'm going to report to the county as our thoughts for that fund. Any donations that come in will be on top of that, and we can take in as much as we want. But there is no mechanism in this budget to spend any of that money. So should money come in, we would have to go back and amend the appropriation budget if you wanted to do anything with it. But it does exist as of today for anyone to.
Well, thanks for sticking with that, though. I mean, it's like good grief.
So it took a while. So I did, like I said, we did the second notification, 30-day lapse period, no response. I got that created in the system today. So when the new year rolls around, it's ready to go. We continue to have our deficit in that federal grant money that we have been doing a $15,000 transfer on each year. Budgeted this year is the same that has been done the past several years, $15,000 a year. We'll have $50,000 still owed at the end of the next year if we stay at that rate. Depending on how general fund receipts go this year, I would encourage revisiting that in the second half of the year to see if we could do a little bit more for that. You'll see that the police levy, not a whole lot of change from what I thought the carryover was going to be. Had a couple expenses, but I think we're going to be at that 187 mark. This is what I think that 235 is what I think the revenue will be based on the reduction of the levy. And so we will address that with going to the voters in the spring, hopefully. But that's what we'll get this year, and we'll have about $50,000 left. Should we spend everything that we have? And the next two funds don't have a lot of activity. That police special fund is there. I think we got $1,000 worth of donations this past year, and there I threw that number in again. We can receipt as much as anybody wants to give, and kept that $6,000 appropriation level. And that's Shop with a Cop and National Night Out. And some of that money we get reimbursed for some things. So, and we'll be down to about $5,000 at the end of the year. And we need to sort of plan for what we want to do with the future of that fund. Mayor's Court is something of a misnomer. That's not the entirety of the Mayor's Court. That is just the Mayor's Court Computer Fund. Most of the Mayor's Court's receipts and expenses are run through the general fund. But there is a portion that the state sets aside for a computer capital improvement fund for Mayor's Courts. And that money is just receipted each month, and it's on that report that we get from Christy reconciling each month. She has bought computers and screens and technology things that are allowable in the past. Keeping that appropriation level a little bit higher than it was last year because she had wanted to do something that we didn't have enough appropriations for. And that's at her discretion. Water, I think our receipts are going to be a little higher than I expected last year. So bumping that by $50,000, going to still be in a really healthy place with the water fund. Probably even over $200,000 after we get the.
So what's that anticipated receipts for December, do you think, Rob? 50, 60?
Conservatively 80,000.
80,000. Gotcha.
More likely 90, but I didn't want to.
Okay.
Nope,
Nope. That's good.
So,
Thank you for taking my old spreadsheets that were obsolete and morphing them into something that is easily readable. So,
we can go line by line if anybody has any questions. It's the same format, what we originally budgeted. The final budget is just where those account lines ended the year after either I did the internal transfers I'm allowed to do, or the several things that I asked you to vote on throughout the year, moving money. So our bottom line budget didn't change, but where the money was housed did. And the 2025 budget is based on really where we ended things with a few exceptions. You'll see that in the police part of the general fund, that's paying an employee. The next one is the streetlights electricity account. We were a little shy on that, so the general fund admin line had to cover that, bump that up just a tick so that we can pay those bills out of where they make sense logically for tracking purposes. There wasn't anything wrong with paying it out of the admin and contractual services, but just so we know what our electricity bill is for our buildings and what it is for the streetlights. It's better to have it that way. In the parks, you'll notice the capital outlay is higher by about $5,000 from the original budget last year, and that is just we need an additional PO on top of what we did from the ARPA money to pay up front for the playground equipment that we're going to be reimbursed with the state grant for. Just have to have a place to put that. All of the personal services, PRS, OPNF, and Medicare lines are either increased by about 3% to cover the expected raises and any bonuses you want, or if that number isn't increased that much, it's because we had more than enough appropriation this year that we could absorb whatever increase goes forward. So, not much. We're not looking at large increases based on the final budget for any particular line. Some are even reduced a bit. Up front, the front office, that's 2,000 more, down 25 for you guys. And the reason that number was off from what the original budget was is just that wasn't that we spent anything more than we thought. It was just that we didn't budget enough for the pension stuff, and that's fine. We will have next year will be an audit year, so there will be some expense there that we think can be captured in the existing contractual services lines for the various funds and departments. So not expecting that will be a deal breaker, but just know that is out there.
Seems to me like it's around 10,000 and we break it between funds.
Probably so.
That sound about right?
Yep. And
Okay.
One of the things that we were able to do today is that we have the Ohio Plan Insurance. That's a twice a year thing. That previously we've been paying that second half in January. We were able to scrape together enough appropriations from various funds to pay that $12,000 bill today. So that's $12,000 less that we're going to have to spend next year that I think we can cover the the audit expense for various places. So
Well, I got the bill. I must have gotten a copy, and I was going to wait till the first of the year to give it to you, so I didn't ruin all your numbers. But
it was
Okay,
paid this afternoon.
good.
That check is in Chrissy's box to go out.
Wow,
to those good
that's
folks.
awesome.
So that does. We were able to do several things like that to pay things.
Good job on
in
that.
December. So
Yeah.
that gives us.
So we paid the entire amount in this calendar year.
We paid the entire amount.
Awesome.
Now,
Good job.
We'll have one.
That's
At
good.
least one installment next year. But knowing that the general fund was going to take a bit of a hit because of paying an additional police officer out of it, we're trying to use up what appropriations we have.
And what was that 12,000 for?
It's one of the insurance plans that the village has. It's the Ohio plan. We pay it in 2 installments, and we split that over police, water, streets, general fund.
It's our liability insurance, covers the automobiles, covers all of us. Yep, property.
Okay, thanks.
And we get a decent discount by paying
Paying
it by
it,
the half,
okay.
as opposed to doing it monthly. So about $2,500 a year. Street fund, that total is $22,000 less than we had this year, and that is because of the paving projects and some other things that we paid for this year that were higher numbers. So our carryover isn't going to be that great. Better than I thought it was going to be. I think we would end the year about $26,000 to the good, and maybe even more depending on how spending goes. But just not a lot to do an extra big paving project at the moment.
Does anybody have any particular questions on this? Jeremy's going to have to take off here, and I'd like for him to vote.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Any questions on those figures? I think we're in good shape overall financially. Rob, thank you very much for all the work that you've done here.
Quite welcome.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'd entertain a motion and a second to approve the appropriations for 2025.
I'll make a motion to approve the appropriation.
Do we need to waive it?
You might need to waive.
Waive the 3 reading rule.
Over the 3 reading.
Do
Three
we need a
reading
resol?
rule.
We do need a resolution.
I'll wait.
Three,
I'll
yep,
petition to waive the
yep.
3 reading rule.
I'll second.
And call the roll, please.
And we will title this 2024-11.
Yep.
Yes.
Ms. Least,
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet,
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yep.
I will need a motion and a second to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Sweet,
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Ms. Least.
Yes.
Thanks again, Rob. Good job on that.
Good luck.
Drive safe.
I had to find my agenda here. Got off track. So again, item number 7, we have council committees and board members, and it's the wishes of the council to advertise for anyone that would be willing to serve, volunteer on the Board of Zoning Appeals or Planning Commission. So we'll get something, if we could, Kevin, posted, and anybody interested can send in like just a letter of interest, I think typically is what we've received from serving or for serving on either one of those boards. Then we can take a look at those at the next meeting and even the second meeting in January.
Do you need a motion to table that? Probably
We can, yep.
that might cover us. I make a motion that we table item 7 for the council committees and board members.
Second. I'll second.
And call the roll, please.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker. Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Ms. Least.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
And item number 8, this is the appointment of public records representative for the mayor and council members, and Mrs. Tomey usually takes care of this training, so that would be my recommendation again for 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Avery.
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Ms. Least.
Yes.
Mrs. Sweet.
Yes.
Mr. Bear.
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker.
We have no other business tonight, so
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.